commitment to building a brighter, more interconnected future for our collective region. Proceeding further, as we embark on this intellectual journey during our Saarc-Day celebration, let us invoke the blessings of Ma Saraswati, the embodiment of wisdom, knowledge, and creativity. In this virtual space, we connect our minds and hearts to seek the divine guidance of the goddess who illuminates the path of learning. I request the technical team to facilitate virtual lamp lighting. It is with immense pleasure and honor that we extend a warm virtual welcome to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Shilkant Sharma, for today's event. I request Rector and Dean FDSR, Dr. Santosh Dhar, to virtually welcome our chief guest. Technical team, please facilitate. Dr. Santosh Dhar, with a wealth of knowledge and experience, has been an instrumental force in guiding and shaping our academic endeavors. Her commitment to excellence and visionary leadership has significantly contributed to the success of our university. Her words have the power to ignite intellectual curiosity and foster a sense of unity and purpose. I invite Dr. Santosh Dhar to share opening remarks at this auspicious event. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rupa. Chief guest on the occasion, Dr. Shilkant Sharma, former Indian envoy to Austria and permanent representative of India to all international organizations in Vienna, Dr. Namit Gupta, coordinator, and Dr. Rupa Shinde, co-coordinator, Cultural and Literary Committee, HOIs, HODs of Constant Institutes of the University, Dr. Arvind Singh, Joint Registrar, faculty, colleagues, and students, a warm welcome to a webinar organized on the occasion of celebrating Saarc-Day. Globalization led regionalism to expand to uncharted areas like trade and investment, health and sanitation, education and research, science and technology, environment, people-to-people contact, and even to issues like terrorism, drug trafficking, human rights, and democracy. This widening of the scope has led to a need for reassessing and building a coherent agenda in the regional organizations that includes an action plan in political, economic, and socio-cultural dimensions. Political harmony, economic interdependence, and common regional identity forms the three main pillars upon which the architecture of regionalism rests, and an exclusion of either of them creates a gap between the anticipated and gains and the actual results. Saarc is the regional organization that unites 8 South Asian states. Efforts to build Saarc began in 1970s when Bangladesh President Ziaur Rahman met his counterparts in the neighborhood and convinced about their commonalities that can be the basis of regional cooperation, influenced by trending regional organizations started by Europe for maintaining region-wide peace and stability in the social, political, and economic areas. The states of South Asia, while liberalizing their domestic markets and breaking the shackles of socialist economy, began to rethink on how to strategically position themselves and seek diplomatic relations. After much apprehension and deliberation upon the efficacy of regional trade interdependence, the guiding principles and objectives were laid, and the 7 South Asian states, namely Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, became the founding members of SAARC. Later on, they were joined by Afghanistan. Officially launched with the charter in 1985 and later with South Asian preferential trade arrangements in 1995 and South Asian Free Trade Area in 2004, SAARC has since then been a soft regional organization that chooses to deliberate over economic and social-cultural issues. Aware of their tenuous bilateral relations and uncompromising stance on national security and sovereignty, it was deemed best by the members to cooperate in areas that are non-controversial, non-political, and non-interfering, yet mutually beneficial. Cultivating shared values gives rise to common preferences and interests. People-to-people contact and unrestricted communication encourages widening of views and aspirations, which thereby becomes a strong foundation upon which the idea of liberal peace can rest. The principles of SAARC are support for the ideals of sovereign equality, geographical integrity, political independence, non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations, and mutual benefit underpin cooperation within framework of the association. The primary goal of SAARC is to advance social improvement, economic growth, and cultural development throughout South Asia. Additionally, SAARC aims to embrace the well-being of people, strengthen group self-reliance, and accelerate economic and social development. The main objectives of SAARC are to place regional cooperation on a firm foundation, accelerate the pace of social and economic development of the countries, and further the cause of peace, progress, and stability in the region. The SAARC principles have recognized that literacy is a fundamental human right and the foundation of lifelong learning, which can be adopted through education. It is important to social and human development in its ability to transform lives of individuals, families, and societies as alike. And it is an instrument of empowerment to improve one's health, income, and build relationship with the world. Therefore, the leaders of SAARC member states have given special attention to, first, to enhance the level of literacy in the region by promoting the quality of education. Second, to develop or strengthen national strategies, action plans to ensure that all children, particularly the girl child, have access to quality primary education, and to improve level of adult literacy by 50% by eliminating gender disparities in access to education. Illiteracy being a major impediment to economic development and social emancipation, eradication of illiteracy in the region through cooperative endeavors within SAARC need to be pursued resolutely. Year 1996 was observed as SAARC Year of Literacy. Member states decided to intimate more concrete programs aimed at eradicating illiteracy in the region and agreed that new and innovative methods like open learning and distance education can play an effective role in meeting regional needs in a cost-effective and flexible manner. Accordingly, the leaders agreed that the institutional facilities in such education available in the region should be utilized on a regional scale. The possibility of the creation of consortium of open universities in the region was also explored. Today, when we are celebrating Saarc-Day. Who could have been the most appropriate person other than Dr. Shilkant Sharma, who has served Saarc and External Affairs Ministry in various capacities? All of us are looking forward to his deliberation. With these words, I once again welcome him to this forum. Thank you. Over to Rupa.
Thank you, ma'am. It is my distinct honor to introduce our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Shilkant Sharma. He is a PhD in high energy physics from IIT Bombay. He was honored with Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT Bombay in 2007 for contribution to non-proliferation and nuclear policy. He joined IFS in 1973. He served in Indian missions in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Geneva, Algiers, and Vienna. From 1981, beginning with a year's stint in the IDSA, he has had uninterrupted association with studies on disarmament, nuclear policy, security and cooperation, and strategic weapons development in various capacities as scholar, diplomat, international civil servant, joint secretary, and additional secretary at headquarters, and as ambassador and secretary general SAARC. He has worked in the IAEA, that is International Atomic Energy Agency Secretariat, from 1994 to 2000 in the External Relations Division headed by Mohammad Al-Bardai. It was vantage point to observe and be involved with global nuclear diplomacy from very close. From 2000 to 2004, he headed Ministry of External Affairs, DISA, that is Disarmament and International Security Affairs Division, as Joint Secretary and as IO. Ambassador to Austria and permanent representative to UN in Vienna, the IAEA and UNIDO, that is United Nations Industrial Development Organization. He was Indian Governor at the IAEA Board of Governors from 2004 to 2008. He has written copiously on issues on foreign affairs, especially nuclear matters, security and cooperation in South and Southeast Asia. Beyond his diplomatic achievements, Dr. Sharma is widely recognized for his insightful perspectives on various geopolitical issues, making him a sought-after voice in discussions on global affairs. Today, we are privileged to have Dr. Shilkant Sharma to share his wealth of knowledge and experience with us. His insights into the intricacies of international relations promise to be enlightening and thought-provoking. We eagerly anticipate the insights and inspiration you will bring to our celebration. Now invite Sir to address the August gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible, visible, both, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. At the outset, I'd like to thank the Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya for inviting me on this auspicious occasion, and for the kind words addressed to me by Dr. Dhar, by Rupa, by the speakers, and I must say that it gives my heart a boost that an organization in Indore has chosen to celebrate this day, to remember Saarc, to commemorate and to rekindle, the Saarc vision, as it were, before the audiences. I say this because at the present juncture, Saarc is at crossroads, and there's no doubt of people who like to pronounce its demise, and some of them choose to project BIMSTEC as a possible alternative. But I'd like to address these issues in my talk today. And while addressing them, I am hopeful that I'll ignite some question answers from the audience. South Asian region remains at crossroads. It is driven by the socio-economic fragmentation caused by the violent events during the partition and their destructive legacy. A bright, cohesive future beckons on the other hand, as happened in post-war Europe and ASEAN. Regional cooperation, especially in the economic and socio-economic fields, could make an effective contribution to this end. As for India, its approach has been to continue to give the utmost attention to its immediate neighborhood. This is vital and basic to Indian diplomacy. Harmonious relations within South Asia constitute an invaluable public good. Their soft power may well go beyond the region and have positive impact on Asia. In that sense, South Asian cooperation's prognosis can be seen as critical to global stability. India's engagement in South Asia rides on the vast matrix of bilateral relations with each neighbor, as well as regional initiatives. While bilateral ties are constant works in progress since independence, a regional approach commenced with the establishment of Saarc, as was described very well by Professor Dhar. Actually, I'd like to compliment her for giving us this preview of Saarc. It was a very comprehensive description of how Saarc was created, how it evolved. And as she said, bilateral and regional must be mutually complementary and enhance synergy. So the Saarc model kept out contentious and political matters and focused on trade, economic cooperation, and the issues in social rubric. In regard to both bilateral and regional, India's policy remains generous and non-reciprocal in creating the basis for shared activities in different domains. As things stand today, Saarc could not even claim that the glass is half full and half empty, as was done in 2010 by the then Prime Minister when he was addressing the Saarc summit in Bhutan. For the last 8-9 years, Saarc has been dormant. In terms of the statute of the association, the regionalism should avoid rivalry in seeking actionable goals and strive towards pooling of efforts by consensus. This consensus was integral to the Saarc statute. Among other things, it gave reassurance to all the members who varied from India, which had the very large population, large area, a huge economy, to Bhutan and Maldives, who also came on the same platform. And the equality and sovereign respect was the hallmark of Saarc. India's thrust in recent decades has been to upgrade and deepen both bilateral and regional cooperation in South Asia. Indian government is invested in forging a South Asian positive sum game for the benefit of all. The shared goal is to tap region's potential by win-win strategies that bring together national enterprises, dynamism, aspirations, and resources of peoples. While bilateral tracks are largely government-driven, the regional dimension also has scope for people-to-people, corporate sector, and NGO contribution apart from academia. Priorities attached to all-round connectivity to spur trade, tourism, transport, and energy as areas for cooperation. The summits which took place actually continued to work on the Saarc agenda, and they, until 2015, they managed to forge a fairly impressive set of documents and active action plans. The watchword then was to implement them. Like as was described by Professor Dhar, the SAFTA, for instance, was a big landmark. It came in 2004. It was followed in 2009 by SATIS, that is SAARC Agreement on Trade and Services. And then a number of connected items were on board at the 2011 summit in Mali, where connected issues in, for instance, harmonization of standards, arbitration, connectivity, the customs checkpoints, the facilitation of trade at the border. So all these things were on board, and action were recommended on these matters. But somehow or the other, there's only one country which came in the way, and that country is Pakistan. Because in 2011-12, India unilaterally offered concessions on trade. India reduced tariffs for these countries. For the LDCs in South Asia, India removed completely the tariff. Who benefited from that? Bangladesh. Bangladesh was very perceptive of these things. So India-Bangladesh trade continued to grow. And today, Bangladesh-India relationship is actually the best. The trade between them is actually in double digit, in billions of dollars. And the connectivity projects with Bangladesh, which have been put into place, are benefiting both sides. Just last week, PM inaugurated the railway connection that takes you through Bangladesh to Tripura. And so today we are now using our very good relations with Bangladesh for the development of the Northeast, which has an economy of something like $48 billion. So this is the win-win cooperation which has set into motion with Bangladesh. With Bhutan and Nepal also, there has been a win-win cooperation which continued. With Sri Lanka, for instance, India's cooperation has been, exemplary. Just 2 years back, when Sri Lanka was in a dire straits, their economy was in a very bad shape. Their supplies of essentials had come down to rock bottom. Petrol and energy were not possible. Who came forward to help them? And without trying to, boss over them? It was India. And Indian spirit of cooperation was Gandhiji's spirit. Ke Vaishnav jan to tene kahiye, पीर पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो मन अभिमान न लावे रे. So India's line has been, whenever its neighbors have gone into a problem, India comes forward to help, and help which is generous and non-reciprocal. There was earthquake in Bangladesh, in Nepal in 2015, and Prime Minister himself was in the front leading help and assistance and earthquake response. So this is the kind of approach that India has. And its interest in SAARC is to build up these multiple diverse sinews of cooperation and mutual identification among the peoples of the country. And their talent is diverse. The whole assessment of South Asia, it goes back to, say, the period before our independence, when this whole landmass was a socio-economic unit. And internal trade among them was very large, 20% of their foreign trade. Today, that internal trade among South Asian countries has come down to very low. And if you were to take India's trade away, then among those countries, the trade is minimal. So this is the kind of a situation that we have. And this situation has been aggravated by the stonewalling that Pakistani establishment does. this has been, it's not that we have had no problems. When General Rashad tried to set up South Asian cooperation in the early 1980s, then also we had problems. We had bilateral problems. We had the Soviet troops in Afghanistan at that time. Pakistan was a big US ally, and they were involved in fomenting terrorism in India. But still, there was the leadership which rose above these considerations and looked at the future, the larger future, which is for common good. So Saarc was created, and those early years were really path-breaking, because they set about putting in place a system and a machinery. The secretariat was created in Nepal. It still exists there. And it was equipped with, at that time, a certain, a modicum of machinery which would spur cooperation. Unfortunately, even after nearly 40 years, now we are now in the 38th year, that machinery remains as it was in 1985. Whereas the populations of this area have gone beyond nearly $1.8 billion or $1.7 billion, 1.7 billion, not dollars, sorry, 1.7 billion. And at that time, it was below 1 billion. So the problems also galore. And how do you cope with them? So I want to mention here, for the benefit of the scholars, the challenges which have come to dog South Asian cooperation. Saarc has actually fallen off the radar, which is a sore point with me, because I have always felt very strongly that Saarc should flourish and it should fly. I sense a generational change in the mindset of guys doing Saarc. And again, there I am so heartened to see Sri Vaishnav Vidyapith Vishwavidyalaya organizing this meeting, and I see young scholars and professors speaking in good terms about Saarc. When it was created, there was the sober, patient, steady hand of those who understood and envisioned regionalism in the face of heavy odds. Today, there is among the youth, I'm accepting you from that, there's a tendency to virtually cut every chicken to get the proverbial golden egg tomorrow. Saarc felt the need for constancy, despite inherent incrementalism, and a need for readiness to move to higher gear. But default Saarc, that means the statute and what was Saarc at its creation, was never meant to deliver on humongous bilateral problems. And this has been implicit in the charter. It is folly to throw Saarc overboard under pressure of 24/7 media and the penchant of latter-day mavericks to thump their chest on everything every day. This is what, in my view, keeps Saarc down and down. So, what are the challenges? South Asian perceptions of each other need to transcend rivalry. Familiarity of centuries today seems to give prominence to a negative side. Perception management must be taken up with great care so that commonalities foster mutual benefit and trust, not contention. So communication, transparency, and accountability are critical. Number two, the gains of cooperation must be tangible and sustainable. This may be done easily in bilateral context. And bilaterally, it shows a brighter picture as mutual benefits are delivered in desired areas. Now, trade is the most tangible as it consists of give and take and benefits people on both sides in entire supply chain. With Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, India's trade, for instance, just 5 years back was 9.2 billion with Bangladesh, 4.1 billion with Sri Lanka, 289 million for Maldives. These are significant figures, though they were much behind China's figures for these countries. Now, China has become a kind of a dragon in the room or elephant in the room, which is fast and unhindered delivery of contracted projects, goods, and services as a fact of life. It challenges India to speed up delivery. Regional indices of economic cooperation are way behind mechanisms like SAFTA and SATIS set out to achieve. All-round connectivity is the watchword for success. And here, again, I would mention that success has been only in bilateral context or sub-regional context like BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal. In this subset of Saarc, there's been progress. And we have built connectivity projects, railways, and we've set up border checkposts. We have eased the business prospects so that trade can go faster. Otherwise, it was so bad that Bangladesh and India were connected by road at numerous points, but that majority of the trade was through ports from Chittagong to Visakhapatnam and then would come through land route. That situation is the bane of Saarc's trade vision. The trade by road should be most logical, should be easy. But what are the impediments? I'll just read it out to you. Inadequate infrastructure, inadequate and improper warehousing, no temperature control system, absence of full body scanners, no lab testing facility, open yard warehouses for imports, no container handling facility, no warehousing capacity at the in international control points. Now, in these areas, over the past several years, bilaterally, a lot of work has been done. India has been trying to improve things. So, but progress leaves much to be desired. Then there is loading and unloading of goods. There again, it's a problem. There is high demurrage charges levied from the time of landing, unlike the sea route. Then, despite a fully functional electronic data interchange and risk management systems, all import cargo is subject to usual examination. Now, this is particularly so in the case of Pakistan, where all these obstructions to trade remain unaddressed. Now, just to give you, a picture of what is happening, what can be done and where the matters are. I have taken work done by the ICRIER, which is a Delhi-based institution, and from a very, very renowned expert on South Asian regionalism and trade. Now, she says transaction cost for exports to Pakistan or alternative routes. She just describes the table, giving the time taken. So, Delhi to Atari is the border with Pakistan. From road, transportation time is 2 days. Port time is 1 day. Delay days are 1 to 2. So total time days are 4 to 6. Now, Delhi to Atari, road and rail, this comes down from 2 to 1.2 days. Port time, 1 to 2 days. Delays, 4 to 10 days because of railway. and time taken is 6.2 to 13.2. Because of our machinery at transit, which refuses to realize the importance of facilitation of trade. Then take Mumbai Karachi by sea. So transportation time is 2 to 4 days. Port time is 8 to 11 days. Delays are 2 to 14 days. And total time is 12 to 29 days. Then Delhi, Mumbai, Karachi, rail to sea, 5 to 8 days, transportation time. Port time is 8 to 11 days, delay 2 to 14 days, and total time is 15 to 33 days, more than a month. Now, why I'm giving you these figures is that a trader has the crunch of time. And much of our trade also was on commodities which could be perishable. Like between India and Pakistan, the trade which used to take place till 65 dealt with salt, dealt with cotton, dealt with sugar, agricultural products, and it benefited both sides. Now, informal trade between India and Pakistan does take place, and it takes place through Dubai. So you imagine that instead of going directly, you go round. And so Saarc set out to straighten and streamline all these things. And number of institutions were created which could address these problems. But, the stonewalling has delayed everything. Saarc even created a Saarc Development Fund in 2008. And as Secretary General, I spurred initial projects there. And that purpose of that development fund was to create projects in the socio-economic field and in the economic field. And India had voluntarily given $300 million as its contribution. But the projects and the whole mechanism, it was the Secretariat of SDF was set up in Bhutan. It is now how many years? 12 years. But the kind of projects which were taken up and implemented do not give much hope. On the other hand, bilaterally, for instance, take Nepal. Bilaterally, there was a very small project in the Tarai region where for girls' schools, toilets were built along the Tarai region between India and Nepal. It was a few crores. It was done in 1 year's time. It has an impact that the attendance of girls in schools increased. So, once you take a project and do it, it has tangible benefits for the people. Same way, for instance, in the case of Sri Lanka, there was a very bloody internal conflict during the LTT days, and Sri Lanka was beset with internal problems. In spite of that, we had the FTA with Sri Lanka. So India-Sri Lanka trade was unaffected by that, and it continued. It benefited both sides. One reason why Nepal was able to overcome a 12-year-old insurgency was that India-Nepal trade continued. It was not affected. Whereas if you were to compare it with other countries and regions where devastated by civil wars, you find a very different picture. So the open border and national treatment in the case of Nepal mitigated economic effects of the deterioration in security situation. So these are the kind of benefits which I'm just narrating, and there are many which can be there. The important thing is to understand them and to realize that these are the things which will come. But what has happened is that, our people want overnight the fruits. And the total commitment to Saarc, for instance, in terms of economic contribution by member states, when I was Secretary General, it used to be something like 2-3 crores total budget of Saarc Secretariat, which is supposed to spur these things. Now, that was less than my embassy in Vienna when I was ambassador there. And the total amount of aid, for Saarc projects and for Saarc activities, which the countries bilaterally and otherwise committed, was much less than what a single country like Nepal would get from the World Bank. So automatically, our ability to influence countries into believing in Saarc are constrained. So there is, when I visited Dhaka in 2010, and I met Muhammad Yunus, who had got the Nobel Prize for the, financing of small entrepreneurs, that whole scheme. He told me, he said, at that time, I said, we have set up a fund for $300 million. He said, for fund for $1 billion. He said, no, you need about $100 billion in South Asia to spur economic growth. So we have been short of what is required, which Amartya Sen calls subcritical. We've always been subcritical in putting these things together. And though India does its best, like Prime Minister Modi has already committed $100 million for digital transformation. And for during the pandemic, South Asian region was affected. So he offered assistance, and he already put in $100 million as India's contribution to help countries cope with this deadly challenge of COVID. So India always comes forward and contributes. But the rivalry among the countries and the perception, somehow or the other, detracts from the impact. India's capacity, outreach, and speed in mobilizing campaigns against natural or man-made disasters that works for mutual benefit. And at times it has drawn appreciation from neighbors. Like when the tsunami hit Sri Lanka in 2004, within 24 hours, our Navy was there to help the Sri Lankans. That was so effective that the Chinese set up, and they found, oh, India can do these things so quickly. So from 2004 onwards till now, the Chinese have put in their massive works to help these countries, and all these bridge and road initiatives are basically to put in much more heft to help these countries and win them over. But it is out of competition with India. There is a long list of unilateral efforts and offers by India in diverse spheres. Trade and investment, for instance, a lot of non-reciprocal unilateral concessions, offers. Like we gave a credit line to Sri Lanka. We also, put in place currency swap, because Sri Lankan currency was, falling bottomlessly. So finance, public health, we came forward with medicines, masks, vaccinations. Then in connectivity, energy, and education, as education is something which you described in great detail, I fully agree with that, with every bit what you said about education, because that is that's the basic requirement of our people. And you find that education is necessary. But take Sri Lanka, for instance. When Sri Lanka went into crisis 2 years back, it was the most educated country. Its literacy rates were in the 90s. And because of the higher literacy, it has managed to bring the population down. Women's upliftment was very good. So all indices of all social development indices were very high for Sri Lanka. But still, bad management at the top level can reduce you to abysmal situations, as Sri Lanka came to. This is where the problem of leadership comes. In Pakistan, for instance, the last year or two, news from Pakistan is not good. In every sense, they have been running into problems. And as a neighbor, again, following Gandhiji's dictum, we cannot be of any help because Pakistan kuch nahi chahta. You know, they mar jayenge par aapse nahi lenge. This is their attitude. And why? It is not for their people. I tell you this because we started a project when I was Secretary General. It was done by Seva, you know, the organization which is based in Gujarat. They did a women's project for trade facilitation in South Asia. And they set up trade facilitation centers all over the region. And they started training home-based workers. You know, home-based workers are most uncatered, uncared for because they have to work under difficult conditions. But they managed to harness their skills and resources. And so from Pakistan, women were brought together to Ahmedabad and they were trained for trade. And they were very enthusiastic. So there was a lady in Pakistan from a village. She agreed to come for this and they were doing excellent embroidery. And so her family said, "Arey, India to bahut kharab jagah hai, dushmani hai, aap wahan kyun jayenge?" But she was determined. So she came. And when she described her experiences from India back in Pakistan, they were very different. And at 2010 summit, I hope I'm not taking too long a time, at 2010 Saarc summit in Bhutan, we had organized an exhibition of the SAFTA, of this Seva projects, you know, which was called Sabha, South Asian Association work. And the name Sabha was actually taken from Faiz Ahmad Faiz's poetry, you know, where Sabha comes, the morning breeze. So there was a project, there was an exhibition of what the women could do together. So there was a nicely woven bed sheet, which was there from Pakistan, and it was done by a tribal woman. And the Pakistani Prime Minister was visiting that along with Saarc leaders. At that time, they could meet together at summit. So he asked her, "Ye kahan bana hai?" So she said with, you know, innocent spontaneity, "Saarc mein bana hai ji." So there was this brand which was coming up, and these women also were able to identify because they found that there's nothing wrong. But all that is now behind us in the sense that the groundswell of this negative tendencies has put all gains onto ice. Now, one of the reasons is this populism within and outside South Asia is spawning a whole host of negative tendencies, and it cripples cooperation. Pressures of populism impact on South Asian cohesion. This trap of populism compels government to seek immediate public gratification from all activity, be that economic, diplomatic, cultural, or social. It compels media to spread negativity and jingoism for the sake of TRPs and spurs narrow-minded moves. Reckless media and social media, they have hyperbole, which counteracts and diminishes even good impact of prompt services extended during emergencies. Like what happened in Nepal during the earthquake, India came forward with enormous help, but the media trying to say that they found holes in India's work, and somehow the other gave negative publicity in Kathmandu. Populism creates scenarios of conflict where none exists. And historic experience of peaceful neighborhood over the centuries is sullied by trumping up new causes belli. Huge populations of South Asian nations, and this is what is my big point, huge populations of South Asian nations are particularly vulnerable to such destructive trends, as even a tiniest fraction of people, misled by them, can cause havoc and lasting damage. Take the populations, for instance, Pakistan population 22 crores. Even 0.1% makes a large number. Even this 1.1%, if they become crazy, they can create havoc. So it is required, again, the Gandhian thing, that teach non-violence, teach satya, teach good things. Because if you were to teach animosity and venom, it will rebound on you. Then external developments and crises have also cast a pall on the region. An assertive China has begun to treat South Asia as its backwaters. I have no hesitation in saying that China casts a baneful impact on India's entire South Asian engagement, be that bilateral or regional. Globalization, as you mentioned, has been good, but it has been bad for the region, both good and bad. At present juncture, the discontents of globalization are more in evidence. All the infrastructure deficiencies in shipping and ports, aviation, border controls, land customs stations, non-tariff barriers, tardy implementation, and pervasive corruption in government machinery combine to eclipse the boon of geographic proximity. It is easier for government to look for options outside the region for quick gains than invest in South Asian economic cooperation. This is the bane, at the moment. So I have, lest it appears too negative, I'd like to end by saying that, all these so-called security consideration, and this is again, I'm taking a leaf from the address given by Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon. He was the National Security Advisor and Foreign Secretary, and he and I share a certain penchant for South Asian regionalism. And he was saying that we should not think security and economic cooperation as antithetical. You should see them in cooperate. Each can help the other. Like if you have economic progress and upliftment, this will help social cohesion and add to security. And if you have greater security, then it helps trade and investment and economic interaction. So both can go hand in hand and do better. But if you were to see them as antithetical or against each other, it doesn't look good. So it seems that now more than ever, despite the dark clouds, exploration should be done of the possibilities that South Asia's economic performance should create avenues, should flourish, and should address the security concerns in a positive sense, which have thwarted previous attempts. There is diaspora about that. I'd like to just talk about it. When you travel abroad, India's name was good, like in the 2000 first decade, 5, 6, 7, India was rising high. It was an economy with a very high growth rate. Investment into India was very good. At that time, if you went to London and New York or Washington or Paris or any of these Western capitals, Indian restaurants were popular. So our friends in the neighborhood who otherwise want to demand that they are equal and all that, they would open a restaurant, call it India restaurant. Even today, you find in Chicago, for instance, I was there in the summer, you find a restaurant, which is an Udupi restaurant, which is down, which is what you call dyed in wool South Indian restaurant, vegetarian. But it was run by Bangladeshis. So why? Because they want to catch on India's progress whenever they can. Today also, India is the economy which has the fastest growth today. As among the large economies, India is growing faster, 6.3%. And its stock is very high at the moment. So naturally, our neighbors would then try to work with India. So this is actually a good time to get them on board and move forward. And these tendencies of them in the diaspora, you should see the positive side of it. And so my whole purpose is that the vision was good. If not today, if not in 10 years, but in long term, that should be the vision. It as happened in Europe. You cannot believe today in Europe that there is no border between France and Germany. They can travel freely between the two countries, though less than 100 years back, they were at war. So how did this come about? Even ASEAN, for instance, has done very well. Their economic performance through cooperation has gone up. So you have good examples around for regional cooperation. One should not give up this thing. And those who believe that they can do sub-regional like BIMSTEC and by keeping Pakistan out, they may have a point, because at the present moment, compulsion of dealing with Pakistan are very different. But in the long run, attempt should be to get everyone on board. And it should occur to them, to Pakistani side also. Somehow the other, there the negative influencers are in much larger number than on our side. It is the negative public influencers who create the hiatus between relations. So they don't allow regionalism, and they want to go all over the world, but forget what is easily at hand. So this is where I'd like to end, that we should be optimistic. We should be looking at the benefits, which are much more, and not be cowed down by small things. And so I think I'll end with this, but I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Rupa ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, sir, for such a thought-provoking address. I think sir rightly said that Saarc should flourish and fly. I think we can all choose our paths to our destinations, but when we join our hands and walk in step, the path becomes easier, the journey quicker, and the destination closer. I think we must also resolve our differences, and we must enhance regional cooperation. We must also win the war against all forms of extremism and I think intolerance in our region. Once again, thank you for joining us, sir, in the commemoration of Saarc-Day and blessing us with your words of wisdom. And sir, with your due permission, can we have few questions?
I'll be very happy.
Yes, sir. So we have one question from Dr. V.R. Sampath.
Can I ask the question directly?
Yes, sir. Sir, please.
Yeah. One is this trading. I was in textile for many years in the industry. So we had a very tough time in 90s because most of the trading that is taking place in the jute and cotton yarn production, that will be shifted from India to Bangladesh. And many have an informal trade. They carry the yarn bundle on their head and they cross the border and they go. So that was a very big peak period of the textiles at that time in India. But after that, I assume that the rules of origin has come. And most of the trade barriers have created the rules of origin. And does the Saarc countries have a uniform tariff on the free trade zones? That was my first question.
Oh, well, uniform tariff in Saarc has not come through regional process. SAFTA certificates of origin, under that the trade is still very, very low. But what has come about is that unilateral concessions by India under SAFTA and bilaterally have increased trade. So with Bangladesh, for instance, the trade has increased. And Bangladesh has actually benefited from what you mentioned, the concessions given by us. They actually textile trade of Bangladesh globally has got a huge boost, and our own textiles trade somehow the other has been in a shadow. So that is the disadvantage at the moment, but it is being addressed by our own in ministry and corporate sector together, how to enhance our textiles trade. And their aim is to go higher end.
I presume that in 1990, they have formulated this tariff rates amongst the Saarc countries. So that was also not uniform, but after that, no development has taken.
No, we have moved much further than that from 90s. The tariff rates, in the under SAFTA in 2010 and 11, there were a lot of agreements, but respect for them and the actual implementation has been tardy and inconsistent. So bilateral routes are much better in that respect. If you were to ask me, your industry concern.
And one more thing, one more question is on development of banking system. How the banking and linking with the production people, the banking system, I think that also needs to be addressed because that mechanism has a very good impact on the trade and commerce. The linking of the trading with the help of the banking system.
Yes, actually, at the heyday, I would say a heyday because after the summit in India in 2007, there was a few-year time in which a lot of good ideas were taken in hand and they were pushed forward. One of them was the financial sector. And so establishment of banks in each other's country was considered. And but we didn't go much far with Pakistan because we had terrorism concerns and the funding of terror by the Pakistani banks and Al Hilali, etc. and UAE was dominating headlines. But still, we managed to get a lot of traction in the banking sector with Sri Lanka, with Nepal, Bangladesh. There has been a move forward.
How about establishing some South Asian banks, so common banks and all those things? That was also developed, that time.
Well, we had talked about in 2010 at the summit, a South Asian common market.
Yes.
I was the Secretary General, and it was felt that unless you think big, you will not achieve. Because there was this thought that there was this आप लोग इंदौर से हैं, वो दुष्यंत कुमार की एक लाइन थी, एक पत्थर तो तबीयत से उछालो यारो, कौन कहता है कि हम आसमान पे नहीं छू सकते, something like that. तो वो था कि have an ambition, and unless you have an ambition, you will not move forward. So work for a common market, for economic union. There were these ambitions. That's a logical culmination of this vision of Saarc to think about economic union. However, I must tell you that even European Union today is beset with problems, and the European Union, which was the success story, is now facing very difficult internal problems because of Russian action in Ukraine and diversity in European Union members about how they want to deal with Russia and sanctions and and immigration, the right-wing ascendancy in Europe. So there is this thing philosophically or poetry that you might bring something good, but the groundswell of other developments might inundate it. So this is the present crisis we are going through, where all the good work done over the last 75 years, the so-called order, is under threat.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Actually, we faced a problem when we want to do trading with the Pakistani for some yarn supplies. The cost and pricing is very good, but we are unable to lift the goods because of the banking system, because they won't accept our bankers. And we are not able to accept their bankers. So the trade was lost. So thank you very much, sir, for answering my two questions.
Sir, I have a query that recently we have been listening about, China's interference and influences on Nepal, then Sri Lanka, then now recently in Maldives, they have got a favorable government, which is pro-China. So how does the Saarc association, if it is, redeveloped or restructured, can help us in getting over this threat of China specifically?
I think the Chinese threat has become too big for Saarc to handle. Saarc is too small organization. There used to be a song in the 50s. There was a film, And I like to mention this because when people expect Saarc to deliver on these humongous things, so I used to say that there was a song, Zara si jaan sar pe saat आसमान धर दिए. तो वो सार्क है, उसको आपने 2 करोड़ तो दिए हैं और चाहते हैं चाइना का जो ब्रिज एंड रोड इनिशिएटिव है उससे डील करे. कहाँ करेगा ये? तो वी हैव टू वर्क ऑन आवर ओन, एंड चाइना इज अ थ्रेट व्हिच अमेरिकन्स आर फाइंडिंग डिफिकल्ट टू कोप विद. So India as a big country is coping with Chinese thing, but in the region we are doing our best. Bilaterally, India is doing best. It is good. It is helping Sri Lanka with Maldives also. There's been a meeting just yesterday in Sri Lanka where Mr. Doval was there, and they had discussed security cooperation in India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Actually, India, Sri Lanka, and the region. But Maldives didn't turn up. There was a meeting in Colombo, but Maldives did not send a representative because this new president is probably under the sway of the Chinese. So, but we are not stopping it. We are going ahead. PM met him in UAE at the summit, and they had discussions. They said, take your troops back. We'll take it back. I mean, whatever we did in 1988 when Maldives government was in a coup, was threatened by a coup, we sent our navy and help the government. So, but this is the problem with small neighbors, which we have to deal with in our best intentions. The thing is that zara sa bhi aap agar negative kar dein, so that stays on for years. Like in Nepal, आपके सारे जो अच्छाई हैं वो खत्म हो जाएंगी, एक बुराई से वो पीछे पड़ जाते हैं. एक फिल्म बन गई, उसमें बुद्धा का जन्म इंडिया का बता दिया, तो काठमांडू में दंगे हो गए. They were, burning theaters. They are so sensitive about these things, and we should understand this. And more than that, our media should understand that. Our media should not, jump on things and deride them. This is something which in other countries doesn't happen. Like in the US, when we used to be in New York, for instance, and a smaller country which was a US protege, their leaders came to Washington. New York Times also give headlines on the front page. But in our case, what happens is that sometimes our smaller country neighbors, when they used to come, that would be covered in the 3rd page, 4th page. तो उनको लगता है कि हमारी तो चिंता ही नहीं है. This management is very subtle. We have to build a certain good nexus with people who support each other. It requires a lot of effort.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Rupa ma'am, over to you.
Yes, sir, we have one more question from Dr. T.K. Mandal. Sir, may I ask question on your behalf?
Please carry on.
Yes, sir. Sir has asked, going purely in terms of major economic interests vis-a-vis current health of Indian economy, what are the real benefits for India to strengthen Saarc?
In trade, for instance, we have compatibilities between India and South Asian countries. There was an RIS study. This is the Research and Information System in non-aligned countries. This is an institution in Delhi. They had done a study in 2010 or so. And they said that if you allow socio-economic cooperation, and especially trade and investment and economic cooperation, the total economic exchanges between among the South Asian countries could go to as much as $100 billion, because they had done extensive study of compatibilities. But in this short time, it's difficult to describe. For instance, we exported sugar to Pakistan. They needed sugar. We used to export cotton yarn, and then that was all stopped. Or if it progresses to Dubai, which has added cost. Similarly, with Sri Lanka, for instance, we had a very extensive trade. and that has flourished. Spices and we have SEPA, this comprehensive economic cooperation. But that somehow the other Rajapaksa government did not. It was almost ready for agreement, but that did not happen. And with Bangladesh, we are actually cooperating in many ways. Our imports from them and our exports to them. It is true that being a large economy, our exports to them will always be more, and their export to us will be less, and they will keep demanding, certain equity. But the handicaps, as I said, in the British time, the undivided India, the internal trade was 20% of their global trade. Though at that time, our growth rate was just 1%, because it was not a very rosy situation for our country under the British rule, because they didn't bother about us and our economy was slow. But despite that, the whole region was trading internally, with itself. And sinews were created. So if you recreate that kind of a situation, we will harness the compatibilities between our different regions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have one more question from Dr. Amit Joshi. He says, half Saarc is in China's lab. How can we confront it?
Well, Chinese have been working on it. When I tell you, when I was Secretary General, we had this Saarc Development Fund, and it was an ambitious. It had ambitious agenda, and I was told by our leaders in India that if you get more projects, we'll give you more assistance. So India was very forthcoming. So I was setting about to do this. The Chinese got wind of it. So they came. So there were a lot of observers, Australia, Japan. There were 9 observers, but Australia and Japan were very active. South Korea was an observer. China. So Japan offered assistance. They so far they have been the largest. Theirs has been the largest assistance in youth affairs and social affairs projects and things of that sort. They would have youth exchange and train them, that kind of thing, but without demanding anything in return. It was that kind of a thing. Australians came forward and they wanted to give a project where rice variety could be developed with efficiency of water utilization, because we have rain problems or monsoon deficiencies. So that project was given to the Saarc Agriculture Center in Bangladesh, and they were working with the Australians. But the Chinese came with $300,000 of assistance and wanted to have a man sitting in Saarc Secretariat. So I said, nothing doing. We don't accept anyone to. This aid comes without strings. We don't accept you to decide. Whatever you give, we have our Saarc processes. We have a Saarc committee of secretaries, which will decide what to do, and the Saarc ministers will then accept it. You can't decide what we should do. The Chinese wanted doing that even then. So it was not acceptable. So Chinese, their approach is different, and this has been very obvious in many countries. Like yesterday, Italy finally said that they will not join the Bridge and Road Initiative. They've got out of it. More countries have come out of the Chinese sway in this area because they realize that these guys bully us. So we have to wait and see.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible? One last question is that, can we use USA as a counter technique or counterparty for the Chinese? Because they are not going pro-Pakistanis now, and they need somebody in this area, South Asia, where they can have a prominent country with them. So, because they're also facing the same problem with the Chinese, because China is so eager to become the world #1 GDP. So, can we use USA as a technical tactics for counter Chinese strategies?
No, I won't put it in these stark terms. I would say that India has been therefore broad basing its relationships in the region and internationally. And India has been working with a number of countries. Plurilateral, like India, Japan might do a project in Colombo, which was a port project. Then India and USA might do a project in Nepal together. So this is happening with Germany. Also in Europe, we have been working projects together in third countries. And that approach, that way we build up sinews, which would be stronger as time grows. But getting one country to counter the other is not our style, you see. At least this is my understanding. Our government feels uneasy trying to do this. If America wants to come there and do this, we will help them.
So maybe this can be a strategy which should not be disclosed, but we should go on like that.
Well, there are more things, as Shakespeare said, in heaven and earth than are dreamt in your philosophy. There are many things which continue subsurface, and we should, also use them.
Thank you very much, sir.
Rupa ma'am, can we
Yes,
now?
sir. We have only one last question. One of our UPSC aspirant, our first year student, has asked this question. So he asked that, how was your journey as an ambassador?
Oh, it was very nice. When I was ambassador, I was dealing with Austria bilaterally. And Austria was also at that time for president of EU, European Union. So in that sense, my interaction with the Austrian Foreign Office was also giving me insights into the European Union's ways. This was 2007. Then I was dealing with the IAEA, which was Atomic Energy Agency. And IAEA at that time was dealing with Iran. And Iran issue was very hot. So I played a very active role in that process. And it was very rewarding in the sense that we always brought to fore India's view. India's view was not one-sided. It wanted to always get everyone together. And the IAEA that year, 2005, got the Nobel Prize for Peace because Mohammad Al-Baradei, the Director General, and his team, they took stand against the flow, and they were proved right. So they were rewarded with the Nobel Prize. That was a very nice time because working with these guys who understood the global situation. And IAEA is the hub of nuclear world. So when the General Conference of IAEA took place, one came face to face with a lot of experts and a whole plethora of activities in the nuclear realm one could deal with. And having physics as a background, it was very rewarding for me. I enjoyed that. Then there was UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, which was also going through a process. Climate change was coming up, energy transition was coming up. So I worked with them also. So the UN system as a whole, as seen in Vienna, was rewarding. And my bilateral relationship was good. And, in diplomacy, you also get to know friends. You make friends. And very high quality individuals who are intellectually very profound. And when you interact with them, personally also, it's a great benefit. It's not like they could say, they could see, like the French ambassador and I were discussing Iran. And we were trying to persuade Iran, don't push things, otherwise you will get into a problem. But they were not accepting. So I told the French ambassador, I said, it is like fostering an exchange in chess. So he immediately woke up. He said, do you play chess? I said, yes, I play. He said, let's play chess. So we started playing chess together. And chess was my favorite because my little home in Madhya Pradesh, we used to play chess as children. So I've grown up playing chess. So I used to play chess with the French ambassador. And it was very delightful because he used to be also very good. And so, you have these interactions with other ambassadors who bring to you a different world. So diplomacy is actually a very rewarding profession. You have to see it in its totality, and not only as an ambassador, but even as a first secretary or as a counselor. I'm taking time, but since you asked this thing, I was just first secretary in Geneva, and Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was to visit Libya. Gaddafi was very keen that she visits. So our embassy was small there. So generally, when big visits take place, they pull out diplomats from nearby countries. So I was asked to go there to reinforce the embassy and prepare for the visit. So I did, temporary duty in Tripoli. And while we were preparing, we could see the Libyan system. They were very opaque. They would not commit till the last moment, program, this and that. So every day we used to go. But in the night, she was coming, like she's coming tomorrow. So today in the night, Libyan television was showing a film. It was Mother India. I was touched. I said, there must be some people inside their system who understood India so well that they are showing this film. And I think your generation may not have been familiar with Mother India, but it was a film made in the 50s. It shows India of that time, rural India, agricultural India, its trials and sufferings and its joys and sorrows. And it was a classic film, and one of the all-time great films of our Bollywood. So at that time, when I was there were other films like Amitabh Bachchan films that were very popular, but they chose Mother India to show. I was touched by that. That look, this man and his advisors has an understanding of India which goes so deep. And the Arabs, for instance, I spent a lot of postings in the Middle East. The Arabs understand India very well. They call India Al-Hind. But not Al means the in Arabic. Not all countries have a name with a D. Al-Hind is one of the, India's historically hundreds of years, centuries of cooperation. And the name Hind is because of the sweet wind which used to come to Arabia from the Gulf, from India. And that means sweet. In Arabic, Sindh means sweet. So, they have these connections from the dawn of civilization. And when you go and do a posting, you see these connections. So diplomacy is, if you have an open mind and you want to see cultures and see how they mutually enrich each other, it is the best profession.
Thank you, sir. Now, before we move towards the culmination of today's celebration, I request everyone to turn on their camera for a virtual group photograph.
Do I also put on my camera?
Yes, sir.
So you are already visible.
Yes,
so
you're already visible, sir.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Dr. Namit. Yes, sir.
Indore is very close to my heart because when I began my career, I did my district training. We in the Foreign Service also, during your probation, you do district training. So I spent 4 months in Indore as an assistant commissioner and my friends were there in the IAS, my batchmates, and we spent 4 months. It was 1974-75. It was a very nice time. So I have a soft heart for Indore.
So now also you're most welcome.
So you should now definitely visit Indore because Indore has been the cleanest city of the country since last 6 years.
I know.
It has really changed.
Yes. And I particularly like
sir, it would be a pleasure to meet you in person, sir.
I particularly like your food. I'm a vegetarian and I like the choris and sweets and
Oh, great.
But sorry, I just wanted to mention this.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Now I request Dr. Namit Gupta to propose words of thanks.
Thank you, Rupa ma'am. Honorable Chief Guest, Shri Dr. Sheel Kant Sharma ji. I remember once when the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister of the country, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji said that you can choose your friends, but you cannot change your neighbors. So I think the Saarc is one such mission which actually is, of talking about neighbors, working in coordination and synchronization with our neighbors and growing together. So Saarc mission is something I feel is for that actually covering up that idea. So on this commemoration of Saarc-Day, I really am thankful to Dr. Sheel Kant Sharma for sparing a very valuable time. I'm really thankful to you, sir, that you could actually spare this time for us. And I'm very much thankful to Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Upinder Dhar for continuously encouraging us to coordinate and do such type of events. I'm thankful to Dr. Santosh Dhar, Rector and Dean, FDSR, Registrar Dr. Arvind Singh, all the other HOIs, HODs, faculty members, students who have all made this today's commemoration of Saarc-Day a wonderful event. I'm also very much thankful to my team who has actually worked in my absence, because right now I'm not in the university. I'm attending this event online from somewhere else. So congratulations and thank you to my team also. And thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
My thanks also very profoundly to all of you and for Professor Dhar, for Vice Chancellor Dhar. He wrote a very kind letter, but I'm sorry I didn't directly reply to him. Please convey my regards and thanks to him. And
he has also conveyed his regards because today he is on a international NAC visit meeting, so he could not join us online also. So he said that kindly give my regards to Dr. Sharma.
Now I request everyone to rise for national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
भारत माता की.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all the HOIs, HODs. Thank you, Dhar ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.